Hey, welcome back to MetFlex and Chill. This is your host, Rachel Gregory, and today is a Q&A episode. Love Q&A episodes. I'm going to be ramping these up over the course of the next few months. So if you have questions, please be on the lookout for when I post question boxes in my Instagram stories. Or if you want to go to my website and hit the contact button, you can always send me a question through there. Anything related to nutrition, exercise, life, mindset, fat loss, keto, not keto, anything at all. I'd be happy to answer your questions on these podcasts. And yeah, I do have one other super exciting announcement before we get into today's questions. So I am opening up something that I've been working on for a little while now that I've kind of been trying to figure out the best way to actually make this happen. And I finally found a platform that's also an app that is amazing. And it's really just brought everything into one place that I really am really excited about. So I will be opening up a membership group. It's going to be a monthly membership for women only. Sorry, guys, if you're listening to this. But if you do have any women in your life that you think would benefit from this, that's an option. But the group is for women only. It's going to be very exclusive for the first iteration of women that I'm letting into it. These will be the founding members. It will be a group of women who are looking to just connect on a deeper level with me and with each other to basically crush any goals that we have in 2022, to do it together and to really have a place where we can just connect as a community and build out a lot of awesome things together, whether that's, within nutrition programs or, exercise plans, whatever you will find value in that I can help with is what I'm looking to do. And also to be able to do it in a community together. So, having group calls, having one of the perks of the founding members is having a one-on-one call with me, which I don't offer at all unless you're a one-on-one client. So that's going to be really cool. So if you're interested in learning more about this membership group, I'm going to link the website in the description. It is called The Flex Fam. So you can go to theflexfam.com and there you can find out more about the membership, find out about the founding membership, or the founding members who are welcome into the membership, and kind of just get a little bit of a better idea of what it will entail for this first month. And if you're interested, you can sign up there. It is limited, so I have a limited amount of spots available, again, because I want this to be very close-knit community of females that I can interact with and, make sure that I'm bringing you as much value as I can. So that is going to be if you're interested, definitely sign up as soon as you can. The doors, quote unquote, will officially close on January 28th. Or if we hit the max number of women that I'm going to let in before that, then the doors will close early. So if you're interested at all, you want to learn more about it, go to theflexfam.com. I will link that in the description. You can always reach out to me with any questions you have. You can email me, rachel@metflexlife.com, with any further questions. All right, I'm going to stop rambling on. Let's get into today's questions. Okay, the first question today, how do you determine how many calories and macros your client should be eating? Okay, great question. So personally, when I'm working with a one-on-one client, I actually just got off the phone with a new one-on-one client yesterday, and we had this exact conversation about where we're going to kind of start off. I always like to kind of have a baseline of what they're actually doing right now, right? Like what they're actually eating, what they're consuming, what their body composition is doing over the course of, 2-ish weeks, based off of how much they're consuming, what type of food they're consuming, protein, how much protein, carbs, and fats they're consuming, all that jazz, right? So I like to see that in real time because there are obviously tons of calculators out there, to determine what, your maintenance calories should be. For example, there's lots of calculators out there. There's lots of formulas and things like that. But what I found is that, everybody is different. Everybody's coming from a different place. those calculators are based off of averages. So they don't take into account, your dieting history, your metabolic health, other things that you have going on, right? So obviously there's things that, it can be a starting place, right? If you have absolutely no idea and you're looking to just, start somewhere, those calculators can be, a good tool. And sometimes I use those calculations myself, just to kind of get a starting place for, if I'm working with a new client and, obviously I have all their stats and stuff and just see what some of those formulas say. But in general, just from years of experience doing this, I really like to take the individual and say, all right, let's just start tracking. Let's track your food, track what you're currently consuming, see how much protein you're consuming, see how many calories you're consuming. And then over the course of, 2 weeks, obviously, a little bit longer is going to be better. So 2 weeks to a month, right? I like to look at what's happening, right? What's happening with your body composition? How is it changing? What is the scale doing? What are your body tape measurements, doing week to week? The scale is going to be something where obviously I've talked about this many times in the past and I've recorded tons of podcasts on this. I'll link one of the podcasts that I recorded specifically about the scale in the show notes. I believe it's called like 9 Reasons Why the Scale's Lying to You. I think that's the title of it. I don't know. I'll link that in the show notes so you can check it out. But the scale is something that you definitely don't want to be paying attention to the daily fluctuations. So when we're using the scale to kind of see what our body composition is doing, how it's changing, we want to look at it more on a weekly average basis, bi-weekly average basis, and even monthly average basis, or monthly basis, just to see those trends. And that's going to kind of give us an idea both with the scale, your body measurements, progress pictures, biofeedback. So how things are going, like this gets a little bit deeper, but in terms of the foods that you're consuming, like how they're making you feel, right? What your energy levels are like, what your sleep, your hunger, cravings, all of that stuff, what your performance is like in the gym, what your recovery is like in the gym, or, wherever you're training. Those are all the metrics that I'm kind of taking into account when I determine, how I'm going to recommend, macros be split up, or what I'm going to recommend in terms of calories, depending on what the person's goal is, right? So it all comes back to just like starting and starting to track and starting to get, an idea of, what you're consuming right now and how your body composition is changing, how your, weight is changing. So really, if we want to, see, like, for example, if you've been pretty much maintaining your weight for a while, right? And you're looking to, switch goals, right? You're looking to maybe lose some body fat, or you're looking to gain muscle in the most optimal way possible. Those are going to be some different goals, right? Maybe we go into a fat loss phase, or maybe we go into a building phase. But if you've been maintaining your weight for a little while, but you haven't been I keep saying a little while. If you've been maintaining your weight for a while, and you're looking to, embark on one of those new goals, but you haven't really been tracking your food, so you don't really know how much you're consuming, that's exactly where I would start. I would just start tracking, start getting an idea of, the food that you're eating, how much you're eating, how much protein you're eating. That's going to be important. And then also obviously, what those other macros are looking at right now. And then we can go and make adjustments based off of the specific goal, right? So the biggest thing here is, the original question, and now I'm rambling on. The original question was, how do you determine how many calories and macros your client should be eating? I like to start off by just establishing their maintenance calories for where they're at now. And then once we have that foundation, once we know, okay, this is the amount that you're consuming to maintain your current weight. All right, now we know, okay, if we want to go into a deficit, how aggressive do we want to go? Then we can, do some calculations based off that. Or if you want to, go into a surplus or a building phase, we can do some calculations based off that. But if we have, a real life picture, a real time picture of the amount that you're consuming right now, the calories and macros you're consuming right now to maintain where you're at, then we can make such better, such more realistic adjustments in real time versus, going online and typing your stats into a calculator and basing it off of averages of random people that aren't you, right? Because there's a lot that goes into, where you've gotten to at this point based off of your personal metabolic health, your dieting history, the amount of activity you're doing, whether that's, just general activity or training, what type of training you're doing, all of that all of that plays into it, right? So really, to answer this question, I would actually check out I did record an episode about how to find your maintenance intake. And I kind of go through exactly how to do that, or exactly how I do that with my clients. So definitely check out that episode. I will link it in the show notes. I don't remember exactly what the number was, because it was recorded a while ago, but I'll link it in the show notes, so you can check that out. Or if you go to my website, metflexlife.com, and you go to the search tab, like under the blog, if you go to the blog and then go to the search tab, you can search for keywords. So search like maintenance, calories, or finding maintenance, and any podcast that I've talked about that will pop up. But I'll link it in the show notes so you have the direct link to that, and then also have the direct link to that scale episode I recorded, which is also a blog post as well. So hopefully that answered your question in a little bit of a long-winded way, in terms of determining how many calories and macros, or how I determine how many calories and macros my clients should be eating. It's going to be, Lila's barking in the background. Sorry about that. It's going to be determined by kind of, first of all, just like I said, tracking what you're doing right now, taking a few weeks to do that, and really just seeing how your body composition is changing. And then we can go from there, right? When we have foundation, when we have like a realistic starting place, then it's like, all right, now we know where you're at, and now we can make adjustments for, what your particular goal is. And then we get into like the nitty gritty of, the macros and, how I would recommend splitting up protein, carbs, and fats. This is all going to be dependent on the individual and really kind of what works best with their lifestyle, what they feel best with, as we're tracking those biofeedback metrics, the ones that I mentioned, energy levels, sleep, hunger and cravings, your performance in the gym, your recovery afterwards and throughout the rest of the day. Like, macros do play a role in that, and everybody's different. Everybody responds differently. Everybody, can adhere to different things in different ways based off of their personal lifestyle, based off of what they enjoy. Some people can adhere to, higher fats and lower carbs. Some people can adhere better to, higher carbs and lower fats. Protein is kind of its own beast that I like to determine based off of still the individual, but also making sure you're getting enough protein. But anyway, now I'm just rambling on. So hopefully that answers your question, gives you a little bit of a place to start from. Check out those two podcasts that I mentioned. I'll link them in the show notes, for further info. Okay, next question today. Thinking of starting the paleo diet. Should I just dive in? Okay, so I would say that, first of all, it's the thing to think about when you're kind of starting anything new, whether it comes to starting a new nutrition plan or a new training plan or program. What's your goal? Like, what's your goal with starting this, right? That's the biggest thing. If you don't have a goal, if you don't have if you're just kind of starting the paleo diet because someone said it was fun or you've heard good things about it, that's fine, right? That's great. But what's your ultimate goal with it? Are you trying to, get away from processed foods? Do you feel like you've been consuming a ton of processed foods lately and you kind of just need a jump start or a way to kind of get accountable to consuming more whole foods and things like that? Obviously, the paleo diet is based around, primarily whole foods, as close to nature as possible, all that jazz. Is your goal weight loss? Is your goal to, lose body fat? Did someone tell you that, oh, I lost 20 pounds on the paleo diet? If that's your goal, the thing to realize is that with, weight loss as a goal, we have to understand that just because going on a specific type of diet, maybe that worked for somebody else, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. And this comes down to, realizing that with any goal of losing body fat, you do have to be in a calorie deficit. So just because you're changing the types of foods you're eating, if you're not in a calorie deficit, if you're not paying attention to that, and paying attention to all the other things that are involved with that, then you're not necessarily going to be able to lose body fat, right? Just because you started this new type of eating. So that's also, something that I've had a lot of experience with in the past, especially when it comes to the ketogenic diet, right? So Just like going on a keto diet doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose weight just because you're, swapping your carbs for fats. If you're not, in a calorie deficit, if you're not paying attention to that, then you might not actually lose weight. Or maybe you lose some weight initially on the scale because it's just water weight and then it balances out and you're like, what's going on? That's probably a whole other discussion. But I would just think about like initially, what's your goal? Like, what is your goal for starting the paleo diet? Another thing to think about is, obviously paleo is a great protocol in the sense of it, if you're someone who's maybe been following the standard American diet or you're struggling with just eating lots of processed crap all the time, paleo is a good route to go because it kind of, especially if you do like those, I think there's like the Whole30 challenge where it's like 30 days of all paleo. You're just eating all whole foods, no processed foods, but you're also cutting out things like dairy and some other things as well. That's something to think about too, right? Like, do you need to cut out dairy? Is that something that you think is going to help you? Is it something that you're willing to do? Is it something that you can adhere to for a period of time? And kind of just going back to, do you need to do that, right? If you don't have issues with dairy, and this is something that I struggled with in the past too. And I went through a period of time thinking that dairy was like horrible and that I shouldn't be consuming any dairy and all this stuff. And really, there's a lot of fear mongering out there around dairy, just like there is around carbs and other types of foods and things like that. But it really just comes down to you as an individual, right? Like for me, I have no problem with dairy. I eat cottage cheese or Greek yogurt pretty much every single day, and I am totally fine and I enjoy it, and it actually helps me to adhere to my current protocol because it helps me get my protein in, has, obviously tons of nutrients that a lot of people don't think about that are in dairy. So that's something to think about too. With a strict paleo protocol, it's a non-dairy protocol. So are you willing to cut out dairy, and do you think that that's going to help you to get closer to your goals? Or is it just going to, add some frustration because you have to cut out a whole food group? Again, this goes back to all the different types of diet. This goes back to keto. Like, I think obviously keto is a great tool for many, many people at, certain times in their life, but it also is not a great tool for many people at certain times in their life because maybe cutting out carbs isn't the best thing that they need to do right now at this moment. I think there's tons of benefits to it if you're, that's a whole other podcast. But it's all about you. It's all about you as an individual. And this is something that I've learned over the years. It's like, everybody is so different, and what works for one person, it might not work for another person. And so if your goal of starting a paleo diet is or you want to start a paleo diet because you have a specific goal and you think that paleo is going to help you reach that goal or get to a place that you want to be, then that's awesome. But I would just think about that from a practical standpoint. And just try it too. Like if you're like, all right, I just want to try strict paleo for a week, see how it goes, see how I feel, then that's totally fine too. But again, is it sustainable for you? So for me, from an overall perspective of kind of how I've evolved in my nutrition journey over the years of trying many different things, specifically, definitely, like I've tried strict paleo in the past for a period of time. I've obviously tried keto, I've tried carnivore, I've gone through all these experiments. I've worked with tons of different clients that have come from different realms of these types of diets as well, and tried them for periods of time and things like that. But what I found is really kind of going back to that like 80-20 rule or whatever you want to call it, where 80% of your day, your diet contains whole foods as close to nature as possible. So, I like to say if they've grown from the earth at some point, or if they've had a face at some point. So anything that's grown from the earth at some point is going to be obviously your veggies, your fruits, things like that, things that aren't, typically made in a factory, right? Or if it's had a face at some point. So animals, right? So anything that comes from animals, whether it's, meat, fish, and any animal, right? And then like obviously eggs that come from chickens, that would be considered under that 80%. And even dairy, like I even include dairy under that 80% too. It is a little bit more processed, I would say, especially if you're getting the highly processed dairy versus getting maybe like some of the brands that are like raw or just a little bit more sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. But a little bit higher quality, right? So thinking about that too, it's going to also depend on the brands that you're getting and where you're getting it from and all that. But in general, keeping to that 80-20 rule. So 80% of your diet is made up of foods that are as close to nature as possible, had a face at some point, grown from the earth at some point, and then the other 20% can be more of those processed foods, those things that are maybe indulgences or, maybe they're more processed, packaged foods, things like that. From a general lifestyle standpoint, I have found that is pretty much the best approach for many people who are just looking for overall health and looking to, improve their body composition and follow a plan that is going to be sustainable for them. So that's just kind of a little tidbit of advice from what I've personally found over many years of doing this is that, keeping things, pretty much 80% of the time, focusing on those foods that are going to have all those nutrients that are going to be the less processed packaged foods, that's going to, be the best bet. And then still allowing yourself to, be in real life, right? In real life, in our day and age now, there's, cupcakes and cookies and events and parties and weddings and all that stuff, and being able to enjoy some of those indulgences, from time to time, even, going to get froyo on the weekend with your kids or whatever it may be, like just allowing some of that into your life and being able to have some balance there, I've found to be very, very helpful in terms of sustainability, in terms of, being able to reach your goal and sustain it and live your life and enjoy it. So anyway, another rambled on question or answer, sorry, to this question. But I would say just, the original question was thinking of starting the paleo diet. Should I just dive in? I would say, if you want to dive in, go for it. But just think about what your overall goal is. Think about like why you're doing this, right? And just be real with yourself and realize that, if it's a challenge that you want to take on, go for it. But, if you don't think that it's something that you can sustain for a long time and you're just doing it because someone else said, you should try this, then I would just think about it further. Think about, what makes most sense for you, where you're at in your life right now and what your goals are, right? All comes back to the goal of starting any type of new nutrition protocol or training protocol, not just doing it because someone else said, you should do this, right? Really kind of diving into what it entails and why it would be a good fit for you. So hopefully that helps. All right, next question. How do you know if you're under eating or you're malnourished? Okay, so this is a good question. I would say, there's a few common signs and symptoms that can give you feedback on, if you are under eating or you're malnourished. There's probably a whole long list, but I'm going to go through just a few practical ones that you can just start to pay attention to if you're concerned with this. The first one is obviously, if you are under eating and you're severely under eating, you're probably noticing some, weight loss and chronic weight loss. That's probably going to be the first sign of under eating. It may not be the first sign of being malnourished, because those are different things. You can actually be eating enough and still be malnourished if you're not getting enough nutrients, if you're not getting a wide variety of vitamin minerals, if you're eating like really, really processed foods that's devoid of, any type of nutrients, you can actually be overweight and be malnourished, or you can actually be overeating and still be malnourished. So these are kind of actually two different things. But that's the first thing to think about, right? Are you eating enough, nutrients, nutrient dense foods, things like that? A few signs of, under eating, would be the first one that I notice in clients and with myself sometimes, especially if I'm, in a fat loss phase. Obviously, if you're in a fat loss phase, you're going to be quote unquote under eating because you are in a deficit. But if your goal is to not lose body fat, and if your goal is to, just pay attention to getting enough nutrients, enough food to maintain where you're at, some of the common signs that you could be under eating would be sleep disruption. So if you're noticing that sleep is not great, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, if you have chronically, bad nights of sleep, obviously one night of sleep that's off here and there, or if there's, external circumstances that are occurring, whether it's if you're traveling as jet lag or things like that. Obviously, I'm not talking about that, but if you have chronic sleep disruption, that could be a sign of, of undereating, of not getting enough nutrients, not getting enough food in general. If you have low energy throughout the day, that's a huge sign that you're just not getting enough fuel. If you are constantly irritable, right? If you have mood swings, these are kind of a lot of the common ones. And again, like these are hard to distinguish, right? Because you can be constantly irritable because of a lot of other things that are happening in your life that aren't related to food. But if you have like maybe a combination of these symptoms, or you're noticing that, everything else is good, but you're still having these lingering things that are happening and you can't figure out why, and you feel like you might be undereating or you might not be getting enough nutrients, and enough fuel throughout the day, then these are probably, it's probably a red flag, right? So, like I said, constant mood swings, low energy, constant irritability. If you're working out and your performance is just not improving, if you're having, crappy performance in the gym or wherever you work out, and you don't notice that you're progressing over a period of time, you might not have enough energy coming in. You might not have enough fuel coming in. If you're trying to build muscle and it's not happening, that's a huge red flag. That happens with a lot of females specifically, just not eating enough to actually change their body composition. This is what we talk a lot about in the Muscle Science for Women program, which we just started the second round. Super, super excited about that. If you're listening to this and you have no idea what the Muscle Science for Women program is, there's a link on my website that has the all the information about it. We did close the doors for this current round, but we'll be opening them up again for another round in the future. So if you are interested, you can go to metflexlife.com/MSW and get on the email list so that you'll be notified when the next round opens up, and you'll also be able to find out about the program on that page. It dives into everything we do in that program. So anyway, just a little pitch there if you're interested. But anyway, so a few other signs, like I said, poor performance in the gym, poor recovery, like if you're not recovering from your workouts, if you're just sore all the time, if you are, like I said, you don't have, like, your mood's all over the place, maybe you don't have any motivation to even go to the gym or even get out of bed in the morning or, go for a walk. Your motivation is low to do a lot of things that you maybe, didn't have any trouble with doing in the past. That could be a sign. For women specifically, if you have an irregular menstrual cycle, especially if it's been something that's been happening recently or over the past few months, that could be a sign for sure of undereating, underfueling. What else? There's a lot of different ones. It's definitely going to come down to, if you are struggling with these certain things and it's something that's been happening for, even if it's just acute or if it's happening for a long period of time, you kind of just need to take a step back and think about this. Think about like all the things I just mentioned. Are you having any of these signs and symptoms? Are you experiencing any of these things, together, right? All the things that I just listed, if you're experiencing, I don't even know how many I just listed, but 8 out of the 10 things I just listed, like that's probably a red flag. So just kind of thinking back to that. And of course, if you are someone who's struggling to figure this out on your own, you can absolutely always reach out to me. I offer one-on-one coaching. I offer programs and new membership that's starting. So definitely check out my website and check out the resources in the show notes if you want to kind of dive into some different resources in there. But overall, just, paying attention to those things. And if you aren't, one other thing too is, if you aren't currently tracking, what you're consuming and you're noticing some of these things, it might be time to actually start tracking your food just to see how much you're consuming, right? To see if you're getting enough nutrients, to see if you're getting enough, calories in general, enough protein, all that jazz, enough fat. And carbs maybe. So yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to, assessing where you're at and paying attention to some of these signs and symptoms, and then moving forward from there. And if you need help with that, if you need, an outside set of eyes to kind of help you look through that and help you determine, even, how much you should be consuming based off of where you're at, based off of your goals right now. Again, that's what I do. I'm a coach. That's what I do for a living. So feel free to reach out, you can go to my website, go to the contact tab. My website's metflexlife.com. You can go to metflexlife.com/contact, and that will send me an email directly. And I'd love to help. Hopefully that gave you some insights. Hopefully that answered your question. All right, that's all the questions we have today. I hope that was helpful. I hope I answered your questions, and I would love to answer more. So like I mentioned in the beginning, if you have any questions related to anything, nutrition, fitness, health, anything at all, definitely feel free to reach out. I love answering questions, and I'm excited to record more Q&As for the future. So yeah, that's all I got for you today. And again, if you are interested in learning more about the membership that I'm offering, it is the Flex Fam community. That's what we're going to call it. I'm super, super, super excited about it. If you can't tell in my voice and the amount of times I just said super, you can go to theflexfam.com. Don't go to flexfam.com. I mean, you can go to flexfam.com, but that is not the membership. You have to go to theflexfam.com. That's where you'll find more info about our group. And I would love to have you if you're interested. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. We do have a timeline on the founding members that we're going to be letting in terms of the amount that I'm letting in. And then also the doors, again, quote unquote doors, will be closing on January 28th. So if you're interested at all, if you just want to learn more about it, just make sure you go to theflexfam.com. I will link that in the show notes, and you can just find out what it's all about and let me know if you have any questions. All right, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll chat with you next time.